2, 1. I think we are. Not yet. I think we are. You'd think I'd have this figured out by 373 episodes, but I am just as thoroughly confused as the day I started, and perhaps that is an analogy for life. But for all the new listeners, Mr. Morales, how would you introduce yourself, please?
Hey everyone, my name is Ed Morellis, retired FBI agent. After retirement, I went into contracting, did some contracting in Virginia, then did some contracting in Iraq. 4 years in Iraq, a year in Mexico, a year in Belize, and then I came back to the home side and decided to complete my book that I've been writing for like 20 years. And now I'm here
FBI.
talking to Tom.
Yeah, he wrote FBI shootout in Miami, which I'll put in the description, sticking the top comment. And again, because I'm stupid and I butcher everything, there's been a lot of new subscribers since I last had you on. Can you give them a brief overview of that, or if just most famous FBI, the 5 minutes that changed FBI history?
Right. It's just it's really a simple book. It's less than 200 pages, I think,
Mhm.
total
Mhm.
written pages. It's got some photos in it, and it basically it's a case study. Is what it is, a study of the investigation and what led us up to the climax, and then the surveillance that was initiated, and the spotting of the stolen vehicle with the two bank robbers in it, and then a short surveillance, a short high-speed chase, and then a car crash, and then after that, it was oh my lord,
It's the 5 minutes that changed FBI history.
right? It
And,
was it was a huge shootout, and about 150 rounds were fired in that 5 minute time frame, and 10 participants, eight FBI agents and two bank robbers. At the end of the day, there were two dead bank robbers, two dead FBI agents, and five additional wounded agents. So out of the 10 participants, nine of the participants were wounded or dead.
Can so the first time he came on, obviously we went over the book. The second time he came on, he talked to my cousin. My cousin loves you, and it was like a dream come true for him. Um, and it's hilarious. You called him a bitch, Chris. You're a bit of a bitch. But we haven't gone into your contracting work. Can we go into that?
Sure, it's really there's really nothing overly sexy about it. I mean, I was a contractor in Alexandria for a military contracting company, and they were involved in training. It was a training company, and they helped train certain types of contractors. And you would there's several ways to train to learn. You can learn by showing, you can learn by doing, or you can learn by listening. So but this company did everything. So the culmination of their courses was practical problems. And I was in charge of hiring role players to play certain types of characters that they were supposed to contact and interact with and stuff like that. And I did that for almost 5 years in Virginia. And then a job opportunity came up with a corporation that was hiring law enforcement professionals for Iraq, to embed with the military. Boy, I jumped at the chance, man. I got lucked. I lucked out. I was embedded with the Marine Corps since I was a Marine for 4 years, like back when Jesus Christ was a corporal,
Yeah.
So, but it was great. I trained with the Marines for about 2 or 3 weeks before our deployment, and then I was deployed with the unit into Fallujah back in 2008, and I was assigned to Fallujah. And it was a very interesting experience. And I didn't know this, but the Marine Corps at the time only deployed its units for like, I think it was 7 or 8 months. And then they rotated units out, whereas the Army at the time rotated its units out on a 12-month rotation cycle. So basically they left right in the middle of my 1 year deployment. So I was transferred over to the 10th Mountain Division in Baghdad. I tell you what, though, that was an interesting job. I cannot tell people how lucky we are and how grateful we should be for the type of men and women we have that go into the military. These people, I mean, it was a shitty, thankless job. and I was there with them. I had the privilege of being there with them with the Marines for 8 to 7 months, and then the balance of that I was with the Army. But I'll tell you what, though, we don't thank these good men and women enough, because it was a shitty job, And I mean, we can't even. I won't even get into the politics side of it, the political side of it. I'm just talking about the actual mission itself. It was very dangerous. And when I was there, I think we lost like 12 Marines in that short time frame that I was there. It was very sad.
It's a shitty, thankless job, and it's especially when it comes down to. And again, I say this as a 30-year-old who with no military experience, so everything I say, everybody listening, please take with a grain of salt. But I feel like it's a lot, quote unquote, easier in the sense that it's easier to climb a mile-high mountain instead of a 2-mile mountain. It's a lot easier to enlist or to go fight when it's against an Adolf Hitler, when it's against the Emperor of Japan, when there are these, whether it's concentration camps or Pearl Harbor, and it's these very open, very simple black and white issues. There is evil, and we need to go crush it. Obviously, after 9/11, we need to go into Afghanistan. We need to get the Taliban. We need to get Al Qaeda. We need to let the air out of bin Laden. But for things like perhaps Vietnam, or just yesterday or 2 days ago, airstrikes in Iraq, or not Iraq, excuse me, Syria, there it feels like there's an issue where I had on Bill Albright, who wrote the book Escape from Firebase Kate in Vietnam. And he talks about how at a certain point, his logic for abandoning his base when he knew it was being overrun was kind of what I'm saying. And he was like, in like a brief moment, like standing there in the middle of the jungle, he was like, I'm not fighting Nazis. Like, I'm not fighting the Japanese Empire. He's like, why am I here? I'm not going to let my men die for this. It seems like you said, it's a shitty, thankless job, because when you're not taking on Adolf Hitler or the Imperial Army of Japan, part of it's like, why am I here? Like, how can you give your A game when it doesn't feel like you're there going after a concrete enemy? Does,
Right.
does that make sense?
You're absolutely right, Tom. Absolutely right. And I mean, you're right, though. I mean, my father, rest in peace. He was 16. He had just turned 17, 16 and 10 months. He lied about his age to enlist in the army in World War II. Okay, and you got to ask yourself, I said, you think back to when you were 16 and 8 months or 10 months, how immature and skinny and scrawny you were at the time. I'm sure the recruiter had to know, this kid is lying to me through his teeth, But you know what? I think things were so desperate, they took him. They took him anyway, and they had to have known he was underage, So, I mean, that's the type of dedication that we had back. That's why they're called the greatest generation. But the thing is, that was a real, you could see and feel that threat. Today, you have this insidious cancer of threat. It's sneaky, underhanded bastard terrorists that'll plant a bomb in a park or drive a semi-tractor trailer into a group of Christmas shoppers. Those types of spineless cowards that we're fighting. So it's very difficult. I mean, don't get me wrong. Each one of those incidents that I just described makes me mad. But it's hard to really focus on who the enemy is, where the enemy is, and that makes it so difficult. And I don't know, being at war, I was at Quantico, Virginia when 9/11 happened, and it's 20 years later, and I mean, it's like I don't think it's been resolved.
No, right. You can kill. It's like you can kill bin Laden, but it's like, that's not like, it's not like the newspapers, Hitler dead, or war over, Japan
Yeah.
surrendered. It's
Or VE Day,
yes,
Victory Europe, one of
there's not
those
these
big
definitive.
headlines.
It's not the clock goes out, fourth quarter's over, Super Bowl champion. It's more like this abstract, and he just passed the all-time rushing yards kind of thing. And it's like,
Yeah.
it happens on a random game that no
Yeah.
one's watching. And it's like, yeah, it almost feels like we can't get that satisfying shot bin Laden, it's over, troops come home.
Right.
It's not that. It's
Right. No, it's not. I think today's in today's environment, but the problem is, Tom, it doesn't make it any more or any less dangerous,
yeah.
because you've got this insidious, cancerous movement or multiple movements out there, that are out there, and you know what? Make rest assured, this is no BS. There are forces out there that are trying to topple the United States of America. They're trying to topple the government. They're trying to topple the people. They're trying to topple our institutions. Okay, whether it's the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, whatever, whatever mixture, you can mix and match whatever you want, between those groups and others. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's others, but and it's hard. Number one, it's like when my father felt the spirit to go join at 16 and 10 months. I don't think you have that now. I don't. Can you imagine? Getting some what generation do they call them now? Z generation or Pepsi generation or
I think
X generation or generation? Can you imagine getting today's generation to sacrifice their youth to go fight someplace?
m-
No,
may- m-
absolutely not.
maybe I generally agree with you, but I'll play devil's advocate for this because not from my own experience, obviously, but from Dale Comstock, the youngest ever member of Delta Force, who I've had on
Uh,
this podcast a lot, and he did a lot of work with the CIA in Afghanistan, where they use indigenous peoples to fight with. The point is he was like, you never know. He was like, you look at these guys, they can't even speak English. Like they literally don't know basic addition and subtraction. They can't count to 10. They're they don't use toilet paper. They use their hand. And there's like you're with these people and you're like, what the hell? Like they're a step above like animals. And he was like, but then he's like, and you'll always be surprised. Like the first day you make contact with the enemy, some of these guys who are total goofballs, to say it kindly, he's like they step up and they turn into the most loyal, heroic guys that are willing to throw down their life. And he was like, you never know until it happens. So it's very easy for me to use that caveat because I will never have to make that sacrifice, God willing. And as much as I do look at my generation and the generation below mine, and I'm like, dude, it's you can't, you get upset when someone calls you the wrong gender because you identify with a woman. Like, how the hell are you going to fight in a war? But on the other hand, I would imagine that there was probably a bunch of World War I veterans raising their kids, and like, man, these kids are obsessed with, I don't know, like baseball, like they don't want anything to do. And then Pearl Harbor happens, and there's probably a bunch of World War I veterans eating their words as all these young guys
yeah.
stepped up.
No, you're
So
right.
it's simple, it's same. Sorry, it's same with Vietnam, right? Oh, these
Right.
long haired kids are taking acid, they're fucking in the fields, they're going to Woodstock, and then some stepped up. It's I do agree with you, but I would like to think that who knows? Maybe New York gets nuked tomorrow and we're at war with China. Maybe these goofball 15 and 16-year-olds, what if they step up in 100 years? They're known as the greatest generation. I don't think
No,
that's
no,
the case, but
you're absolutely right, Tom. But and I agree with you up to a point. However, I look at it, not that there aren't people out there like that. There are. Okay, but and I don't know the percentages, and I'm just talking, just spitballing off the
yeah,
top of my head here. Let's say that in my father's generation, the greatest generation, 50% of able-bodied men and women, some women, rules were different back then. 50 to 60% of able-bodied men willingly volunteered to go fight. As time went on from that war to the Korea War to Vietnam to Panama, Grenada, that 50%, 60% number went down, 10 percentage point per generation. And then the next generation, it goes down 10%. And the following generation, it goes down 10%. Whereas now, I would be willing to bet money that only in our current society, only about 10% of able-bodied men and women would volunteer to go serve their country. And I think you have to agree with me on that, because you know what, though, the majority of people right now are so involved with their own issues, their own self-satisfaction, that they don't put country first.
I'd
I mean,
agree with you.
I've
I'd
always
agree
put
with you
country first. If
100% on
you
that.
got the country, you got nothing.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100% on that. I don't
Yeah.
think,
So
again, so
because you know
yeah,
what, though, I met this, yeah, uh, I can't say one type of person, because there were multiple different types of people. There were men and women, they were black, whites, Hispanics, Asian, all different kinds of people. But their heart, their esprit de corps, their love of country was so obvious, that um, the problem is that we beat that group of people down. The same people, I mean, the military has shrunk so much, and it's an all volunteer service now. It's the same people that were fighting when the war started, were fighting, a couple of years later, and we're fighting a couple of years after that. And I met guys that have been deployed to Iraq 3 and 4 and 5 times. Okay. And the same thing is true in Afghanistan. You met guys that had been deployed to Afghanistan 2 or 3 times. Okay. You're beating down the people, your best people. You're beating down that generation. Okay. Since they're the only ones that are taking the hit, everybody else is just kind of smoking and joking back in the States, protesting, oh, don't call me a man, I'm really a woman, or call me something else, whatever, cause they have nowadays. Okay. We are wearing out that generation. Okay. And I think, that I wouldn't be adverse to installing the draft again, have people serve the nation. I think they do it in Israel. They do it in Switzerland. I think everybody in Switzerland has to give 2 years of service to
South
the country.
Korea.
And and you don't have to be in the military necessarily, but you got to give 2 years of service, men and women. Women give service in the medical field or whatever, unless they want to go into the military. That's up to them. But if people don't have skin in the game, okay, then it's very easy for them to just kick back and say, so what? So what if the Russians are on the beach in Miami? So what if the Chinese are on the beach in San Diego? I'm okay as long as I get my Xbot or whatever the heck people play nowadays. Their Kindle or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely makes it definitely, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. Yeah, you see it in South Korea, you see it in Israel, and it seems like a generally good idea. For me, I have to be careful about saying it because you can say it, you served. It's I have to be careful for my own just because I never did. I don't feel right saying that there should be a draft because I never had to serve and I never will. So I don't think I'm in a position to be able to dictate that. But I mean, I think you're free to dictate that, and it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't sound like a bad idea. But I'm also saying that as a 30-year-old who wouldn't have to do it.
No, but you know what though, Tom, never say never. I mean, you're still young. I mean, in the next 30 years, we could see some humongous threat show up. Maybe as a space force.
I
Flying
think
saucers.
I think we
From
will.
space. Everybody's going to be on the wall.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it will be that. I think that there's absolutely a conflict coming with China. I don't think it's escapable. I don't.
No, yeah, you're right though. There has to be a showdown somewhere. I mean, it's like
It does. Let's
they
just
keep
get
they
it
keep
on.
playing games, and you know what gets me? I mean, it gets me and it doesn't get me. The U.S. People say, "Oh, the U.S. isn't as great as you say it is." Bullshit. It is. It's the greatest country in the world. I mean, I've lived overseas, pal. And I've seen what communism is like. I've lived in a communist country. I've seen what dictators are like. I've lived in post-dictator states, and anybody who thinks or says that, oh, America wasn't that great is so full of crap. It's unbelievable, because it is the greatest country. I mean, is it perfect? No. Do Americans make mistakes? Yeah. Are there corrupt Americans? Absolutely. Just look at Congress. Every one of those swinging pair of legs up there has probably got some some baggage, some skeletons in the closet. But the thing is, what gets me the most is that the U.S., for all its flaws and blemishes and stuff like that, we try to play by a set of rules. Okay. And other nations like Russia and China, they mouth the words. They'll say, "Oh yeah, we'll play by the rules," and then they turn right around and stab you in the back. Okay, they don't play by the rules. They'll only say it publicly. Oh, we all play by the rules, and then they turn right around and do whatever the hell they want to do. And that's the problem with China. Okay, China says, well, we all do this, we won't do that, and then they turn right around and they do what they want. And that's the problem. I think China has gotten so far ahead of us because we play by the rules. Oh, look, China's not playing by the rules. Let's go to the UN. It takes 2 years to get, or 3 years or 5 years to get something through the UN.
And,
It's like,
and what is the UN even going to do? Hey, China, stop that. And China's like, no.
exactly. They're going to send them a sternly worded letter. It's like, don't stop that.
Yeah, stop that. It's they don't. I mean, China at this moment, as we speak, China has concentration camps, and to everyone saying, "Oh, America has concentration camps on the border," no, they don't. And
Oh
mind
my
you,
God, please.
miraculously, as soon as Trump left office and Biden went in, they turned from concentration camps to temporary shelters. But
Yeah,
that's
no,
another discussion for another time.
yeah,
China
no
has
kidding.
2 million Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps.
Okay, yeah, but the thing, that's the thing. See, and that's another thing that grabs me. You get the I don't know what you call them, the fifth estate, the fourth estate, whatever, the press and big tech. You know what? As long as it benefits them and as long as they profit, they'll turn their back on it. But the second it affects them, they'll be the first ones yelling and screaming, "Oh my God, look at this! China's not playing fair. We're losing profits." And you're right, though. I cannot believe that any individual country or organization in this world would not be up in arms about a nation like China enslaving people. I mean, you talk about slavery in the 1860s or 1840s. I mean, look at that. They are far more harsh. I mean, and I hear about totally working people to death, raping women. It's like, my God. I mean, and nobody seems to bat an eye. I mean, it's like big deal. Yeah, it's not happening here. It's okay. Well, you know what? That just emboldens bad people. It emboldens your adversary.
And I think, and well, it's also just, well, they just flood everyone with money. It's very easy to shut someone up. Stealth War by Brigadier General Robert Spalding, who I had on this podcast, episode 161. His whole book is about China's stealth war against the United States, and
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
yeah,
it's amazing. I mean, it's
it's
amazing
an
that
outright
we
war.
are so stupid. We are patsies. We are so naive. I mean, I saw it overseas. I mean, not to the extent that I see it now. I mean, I'm kind of out of the game now. I mean, I'm retired, but um, they are throwing money at people. And a lot of these university professors are being duped or conned or compromised. Okay, to a point where, hey, listen, dude, we want you to help us here, we want you to help us there. Why don't you give us the code to this new technique that new technology you have? And they either have them paid off or compromised or some sort of blackmail going on. It's like, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's just amazing. What they do. And the thing is, when the FBI, I forget, it was like within the last 2 years, the FBI arrested some professor or rogue scholar from China because they suspected that he was trying to bribe and or spy on some universities. They arrested him. And then China came back and said, hey, you release him or we're going to arrest Americans in China. It's like, I mean, then you start that war, hostage for hostage, hostage for, back and forth. So, but my thought is, hey, warn American corporations, this is going to start happening. We're going to start enforcing the law and we're going to start arresting no matter who for spying or spreading influence or whatever, whether it's China, Russia, Germany, Britain, who cares, we're going to start arresting people for violating our espionage laws.
Yeah, and yeah, the number of Chinese nationalists within defense contractors in
Oh, it's amazing.
California. Yeah, oh yeah.
It's horrible.
Oh yeah, they go in, they seep in, They seep in and they get documents. I mean, it reads like a spy novel, but I mean,
Yeah,
Stealth War by Brigadier General. It talks about these guys
yeah,
working for Boeing and Northrop
yeah,
and Raytheon, and they get these documents and they hide them and they scan them, bring them on a hard drive, go back home. You never see them again.
yeah, exactly.
It's how China operates. They
Yeah.
don't care. There is no
Well, I mean, see, the thing is, they're using our own laws against us. We are such an open society. I don't. I'm sure you know that. If an American firm wants to start business in China, you know the rules, right?
China. It's they get 100% of their intellectual property.
No, they have to agree to share intellectual property. Okay, and the corporation in China cannot be owned by a foreign entity, foreign country. It has to be owned by a Chinese national. So 51% of the company is owned by a Chinese national. That gives them absolute and total control, and 49% is left to the foreign entity. America, Australia, whatever. So you're basically, and another thing, the only way you can do business in China is for a corporation to build a factory in China. So that way they've got you over the barrel. You have to. The only way you can work there is to build the factory, and then you have to hire all locals. Okay, so and then you have to give them all your intellectual property. So I mean, they don't
And,
have to do
and the
anything.
thing is like I don't think anything they're doing is bad. I think every nation should do that. I think hey, great China does it. We should be doing it too. And Britain should do it and France should do it where you have to build a factory there and you have to hire locals. I don't think there's
Yeah,
anything wrong with
but the
looking
thing
out
is,
for your
what the
country.
the thing is, when Trump tried to do that, he
He's a
was
racist,
labeled,
he's a
he's a
fascist, yeah.
bad man, he's a racist, he's xenophobic, and I agree with you, Tom. What's good for the goose is good for the gander, and I think a friend of mine told me he had a Brazilian wife, and he said that when he got married or when he was dating his wife, his fiance, he tried to get a visa for her to come to visit him in the U.S. And it's not unusual for different countries to have fees for issuing visas because they're doing work for you. Okay, they're processing paperwork and they're interviewing you and whatever country's policies are, interviews, criminal checks, whatever. So the U.S. charges Brazil $100 per visa, and when he wanted to go visit his fiance in Brazil, he had to get a visa. Okay, and guess how much they were charging him? $100. Okay, Brazil said, okay, you charge our people $100, we're going to charge your people $100. Okay, and that's fine, that's fair. Okay, but the thing is, when we do it, it's like, oh my God, you guys are mean, you guys are nasty, you guys are one way. It's like, hey, dude, if you want to set up a set of rules to benefit your country, why can't we set up a set of rules to benefit ours? Okay, if you want to charge, and that's where I agree with Trump. If China had a 25% importation fee on something, well, you know what, through China, we're going to have a 25% importation fee on something that you're sending here. Perfectly legit, tit for tat, you know. But when he tried to do it, it's like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. He's such a bad man. It's like, dude, you got to live in the real world, you know.
It's and then it's and yeah, not even to go down the political road, but I mean, Biden comes in, he reinstates the allowance of Confucius Institutes in the United States, which are pro-China academia groups. He we're sending funding to the Wuhan Institute of Virology through 2024, which
Yeah,
just makes brilliant sense.
yeah, I
Allowed
know.
China into the Texas power grid. Hmm, that's a little odd how all that happened together.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
when questioned about the 2 million Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps, Biden said, quote, "It's a cultural difference."
right. And
China
that was,
locking up 2 million people is a cultural difference.
yeah, that was such a bullshit answer, by him.
It it,
It just
it
makes me
is, and
mad.
it's just it it I don't look. Trump's not perfect. He's an asshole. He's an egotist. He's an egotist. I get it. It's yeah, he is. You have to. I think if you're a billionaire, how are you not that? But it's this. We've been conditioned to think that anything that putting America first is somehow the end of the world. That we have to be the piggy bank for everyone. We have to allow everyone to do everything. China's GDP is set to double by 2035. China's economy is set to pass the United States by 2028, possibly 2026. Once they start doing that, they're going to have the piggy bank to jack up their defense spending. It's not going to happen today and it's not going to happen tomorrow, but China's on track to have a bigger military to
Oh yeah,
force.
absolutely, absolutely. And
I think
we have politicians that are playing, stupid games in Washington D.C., defund the police, defund the military. I mean, you guys are so
I
stupid,
don't
so naive.
I think on the surface it's stupidity. I think these people are competent and I think they're being paid off by the Chinese.
Yeah,
It's a brilliant chess move, right? Get
yeah,
politicians to defund the police, cause civil
yeah,
strife in America.
yeah,
I think the idea that these people are stupid, that's giving them way too much credit because stupidity is not malicious. Stupidity is
yeah,
just stupid. I don't
yeah,
think that. I think these people are competent and I think they know
yeah,
exactly what they're doing.
yeah. I forget who said it, and I honestly, I wish I could remember for this conversation, but someone said, "Hey, America's going to fall not from an external threat, but from an internal threat. America's going to fall from within.
I think
Okay, we're going
Khrushchev.
to fall to our own people, to
Yeah.
our own compromised, stupid people.
Yeah, I think that was not Khrushchev. I think that was Yuri Bezmenov, the guy who defected from the USSR to the United
Yeah,
States and talked about the it's like a 30 or 40-year plan by communist entities called active measures. And
yeah,
there's like 4 steps to overthrow a country, and it takes like half a century. But they say it
yeah.
started in 1970. I don't think that's that absurd. I mean, it was Khrushchev or Brezhnev or one of them said communism will come to America, but it won't come on the shores. The flag will be raised from within.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, just look at our society now, It starts, with the education system and it just spreads from there.
Yeah.
It's scary, that's why, when people say, I'm sending my kid to private school, hallelujah. I wish we could all send kids to private schools, because the public schools and the public universities are trash. I mean, they're absolutely horrible.
Yeah, and the first thing you have to do is you have to take over a free press and freedom of communication and speech, and we're seeing that in spades right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
It's
I
defeating.
gotta tell you, I mean, I'm not, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not a legal scholar or anything like that, but I'm amazed. And I don't know whether it was a faux pas on society's part, but I am amazed at, and when I stop to think about it, uh, freedom of speech is only freedom of speech from the government. It's not freedom of speech from a company or a corporation
Mhm.
or anything like that. So I have to be honest with you. I was stunned when a company would fire a person because they said something that the company disagreed with. Oh, I know I'm a Trump supporter. Boom, you're out of here. We don't cotton that. We don't accept people saying that. It's like what? They could fire them. And then I started doing more research, and yeah, it's a private corporation.
You're absolutely correct, and I've said that on this podcast multiple times before, and I'll say it again. I think Facebook, I think YouTube, I think Instagram, if they want to ban me for having an American flag and talking about election fraud, they're a private company and they're allowed to do that. I think it's despicable. I think it's disgusting and lower than dirt, but I think it's their freedom to do that because if it was my company, I think I would be saying it's like it's my podcast. If someone said, "Tommy, you should be having a more liberal guest," I'd say, "Fuck off. This is my podcast." Well, if I can say that about myself, I have to extend that to Google. I can't have
Well,
my
you know what
company
though,
yeah.
Tom, I agree with you. I agree with you with what you just said. Okay, but I think society and the courts have to draw a clear distinction between you and say Facebook. Okay, Facebook is providing a quote unquote public service. Okay, they are. I mean, even though they're not, and I think we are our court system and our legislatures have been remiss in letting this happen. But these entities are now the new Ma Bell.
Town Square.
They're the new hey, the telephone. Back in the old days, the telephone was a private corporation. I don't know how the government got involved in it. Well, I do because it was a communication system. Okay, and then it got well, nationalized or something like that. But I think that these new tech companies are the new Ma Bell, and I think the government needs to step in and take control. Okay, and I know that sounds like a communist statement, but whenever an entity, a corporation like that, has the power to shut down half of society, that's BS bullshit. Okay, and if they're providing a public service, okay, then the public access, public service should continue.
Yeah.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
not like you're running, a Sears and Roebuck, that's different. Okay. You have to want something from them, but a public service now these companies have made it so that, hey, they're indispensable from society.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky line to walk through, right? Because it's
Right.
like, how can I sit here in the first half of the conversation and we talk shit about China and then we turn and but I agree with you. I think they've turned so big and technology has changed to such an extent that these are the public square. This is
Yeah.
they're the taverns where you go and talk, right?
Yeah.
And then not only that, now with a pandemic, they truly are the only place you can congregate and speak. So, I mean, they are the cyber town square and they have political leanings and we have I'm sure the intelligence communities know, but I mean, how do we not know they're getting
Yeah.
money from China or from
Yeah.
Russia?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
go out there and they ban anyone that says anything in particular. I mean, well, let's
No.
put it this way: what society, what regime, or what entity in any society on any continent in any millennia in the history of humanity has started banning people, banning books, banning documentaries, banning individuals for saying opinions? When has that ever began and then ended well? It always ends with or piles of bodies. That's how
Never,
it
never,
always ends.
never, never, never. But I don't know if you're old enough to remember when I reference Ma Bell, the telephone company.
I'm 30.
Okay, Ma Bell was the only telephone company in existence in the United States, like from 1920, 30, 40, 50. Okay, and I think maybe even into the part of the 60s. They were so big, and Congress noticed. They said, "Hey, we got to do something about it." They were so big, they became a huge monopoly. They controlled all communication in the U.S. Okay, so the Congress came in and said, "Hey, Ma Bell, we have to break you up. Okay, you're going to have to be, I don't know what the legal term is, but they broke them up. Okay, it wasn't, and I honestly don't know how the financial things, played out, because if you own 100% of something, and the government comes in and says, "Hey, you have to split it up." Do you still own it, or do you have to sell it off? Or I'm not sure. There's a lot of stuff in there that I don't know. But in the end, it ended up being good for the people, because when you broke up the monopoly, that's where you got all these different phone companies come in. Okay, think about all the different phone companies that are out there. That is a direct result of breaking up the monopoly of Ma Bell. Okay, and what is the best thing for society, or
Competition.
for the consumer? Competition. Competition. Okay, you couldn't have some company just you really put it to you on fees and this and that, when your competitor say, "Hey, aren't his fees excessive? I'll charge you half. You come over here, take our service." And that's what has to happen to these tech giants. They have to be broken up. Okay, you need to make like 6 or 8 Facebook companies and have them compete against each other. You need to make 6 or 8 whatever, Twitters. Okay, and then have them compete against each other. That way you keep everybody honest. Okay, because right now there is no competition. These guys can do whatever the hell they want, and that there is a way to fix this. I mean, you don't nationalize them and take over like they do in certain dictatorial countries, like China, there is no there is no competition for whatever China has as Facebook or Google or whatever. But in the West, if we could break up these monopolies like we did Ma Bell, okay, um, it'll be good for society. You'll have real and legitimate competition. What was that company that was in the paper in the news recently? Parlor.
Parler, yeah, again, yeah, so they went off to create their own Twitter and then Apple kicked them off the App Store, Google kicked them off the Google Store, and Amazon revoked their AWS, Amazon
Right.
Web
You
Services.
know
So
what though? They did that for multiple purposes. Okay. Number one is because Parler was right wing, and these other companies are left wing. But here's the kicker: they did it because it's also competition.
competition, yeah,
Competition, and that's where you hurt them.
yeah.
That's where you really get them. Okay, if you allow real competition to go to these companies, they'll get in line. They'll start towing the line, saying, "Hey, you know what? We're not going to start canceling people. We're not going to start restricting people's speech because if we do, everybody's going to go to Parlor." Okay, and then what do you got?
Yeah, it's that was the creepiest thing because it was like, if you want your own Twitter, go make one. So someone went and made one. And then it's not just enough that if you're on our platforms, we're going to censor you and cancel you and shadow ban you. We're not going to let you go on any other platform. Don't you
Yeah.
dare go make your own.
Well, see
Come
that I
back
mean that
here.
that that is just I mean that is just so
Creepy.
wrong on so many levels, and it should be wrong legally. But
Well, and
I think
that's the thing is on the surface, it's easy for you and me, Trump supporters to say, "Oh, they're against us because we're conservative." I think there could be a legal case saying that these are acting as monopolies. They're
well,
coordinating.
I don't know if you're aware or not, and I honestly have to be, I'm not up to date on this, but back when about 4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I heard that there were several state attorney generals from the like state of Texas, state of Florida, like some other like state, different states were grouping together to bring a class action suit against these tech companies because they were monopolies. Okay, and there is a mechanism in place that a state or federal government can bring action against a company that has a monopoly and is kind of like price gouging. Okay, after a hurricane, a bottle of water used to cost you 50 cents. After a hurricane, it costs you $5. It's like, Jesus, dude, what's going on here? Because there is no competition. They're the sole provider. And I don't know how much traction these state attorney generals have gotten, but I'm all for it. We need to break these guys up. Okay, I don't know. Again, I don't have the economic or historical knowledge to say. I don't know how many companies were broken up that to make Ma Bell. I mean, Ma Bell made how many companies? But once they were broken up, man, the competition went through the roof. So, and I think that's what needs to happen. I think, yeah, you need to put these companies on notice, saying, "Hey, we're not going to take your shit anymore.
Yeah,
We will
yeah,
bring legal action against you."
yeah. Because right, they did right. That was Teddy Roosevelt, right, with Standard Oil. Right, that was the early 1900s. They broke it
Yep.
up because it had a total monopoly. Adjusted for inflation, Rockefeller was worth at the time $400+ billion.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's true. That's another good example. Back when the oil barons were around, and the railroad barons too.
Hmm.
You know, these guys had a monopoly. They could charge you whatever the hell they wanted to charge you for transporting your cargo. So you know, I mean, at the time, in the short term, it's good for the owner because he can rape you all he wants. Because you have no choice. But when the government steps in and starts breaking up these monopolies, it's like, oh, now you
Yeah.
really have to compete.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like it needs to be done. It just it's a not it's a dangerous precedent to where you can just wipe people out for not talking or for saying things that you don't like. Like, that's an objectively bad, but no one cares because if half the country is left leaning and the left leaning companies are banning conservatives, no one cares because it fits their agenda. It's just, yes, queen. But it's like, dude, it's going to come for you. It's going to come for you
Oh
next.
yeah, eventually. That's the thing. It's the French Revolution. It goes back to the French Revolution. Eventually, people will say, "Hey, but I was on your side." As they're putting him in the guillotine. It's like, "Hey, they're coming for you too."
They don't give a shit.
No, they don't.
It's you are a useless pawn, or you are a useful pawn right now, because they're
Yeah,
like, you're like, yeah, take down the evil conservatives.
yeah,
Well, eventually, when you speak up, they're gonna take you out,
yeah.
and,
Exactly.
there's
Or when
gonna
it's
be
convenient for them, they're going to take you out. Yeah, yeah,
yes,
for sure.
it's like standing in a forest, and your camp is a mile from mine, and the forest is burning around my camp, but you don't care because you don't like me. It's like, dude, you're in the same the forest. The fire's gonna come to you. It's
Exactly,
gonna burn this
exactly.
whole thing
Yeah,
down. It's getting
yeah,
me first.
yeah, yeah,
It's
for sure,
it's a
for sure.
dangerous thing. But then I guess, uh, to flesh this out and to keep pushing it. What would be the limits? So we break up big tech, right? We say that these are public services: Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. we say that these are public services that everyone communicates on, and so they have to be broken up. They have too much power. Well, I think too, which I do think should happen, but then I also have to recognize, well, then that argument will be used against other companies. What other companies are? Could you say pharmaceutical companies? Could you say Tesla?
But
The only,
Tom,
yeah,
the difference is pharmaceutical companies aren't turning around saying, hey, you know what? We're not going to serve
that's true.
uh,
That's true.
a certain segment of society.
That's very true.
We're not gonna provide medicine to Democrats. We're
That's
not
very
gonna
true.
provide medicine to purple people or whatever. That's not the issue there, because they provide a service to everybody, and that's the key. They have to provide a service to everybody without exception, without any strings attached or caveats.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know whether you heard, and I would urge you to research this and then tell me what you find out. Did you? I don't know if you heard or if you remember, but who's the guy in charge of Facebook? What's his name?
Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, I heard Mark Zuckerberg about a month ago threatened the government of Australia. He said, because they were saying, hey, we're going to raise your taxes. We don't think you pay enough taxes in Australia. And again, I haven't got the exact quote. I saw something on YouTube where I saw some government officials talking, but he threatened to shut down all communication in Australia. And you know what? I got news for Zuckerberg. Australia's not the U.S. Okay, Australia's not full of pussies. Okay, Australia is like, hey, dude, you're a freaking service provider, and you're a foreigner on top of that, and you're threatening to shut down communication in Australia. I'm hoping that they have some huge case pending against them. Okay, I'm hoping they take some real punitive action against Facebook in Australia and Zuckerberg. Like, put out a warrant for his arrest, saying, hey, anytime you show your face in any, British empire, like Canada, Australia, England, whatever, New Zealand, you can be arrested, and brought to trial. That would be ideal. But can you imagine that? Why don't you research that and find out, and tell me what the results of it is.
I will. It seems that, but then you have to wonder, so like, how come there hasn't been, why haven't these companies been broken up? And I have to start thinking logically. I'm like, why haven't these been broken up? And the only conclusion I can come to is because it's a government wet dream to have everyone under one or a couple of platforms. You only have to monitor a couple of them. The government probably doesn't want to see them broken up because
Yeah,
it's a
but
lot
see,
easier to control
Tom,
a handful of CEOs.
Which government?
Which government?
Which government wet dream? Right now, big tech is on the side of Democrats. Okay,
That's what I mean.
On the Republican side, it's not a wet dream at all. Okay, and besides that, okay, there are too many Republicans that are weak kneed. Okay, uh, and you hit a nail on the head when you said that big government probably wants that, or can use it, but the real issue, I think, Tom, is money. Money. These companies are providing, I heard the term recently, dark money to politicians to help them get elected. You know what? And it's so typical. It's like the 1930s, in Chicago, when Al Capone used to run fund Mayor Daley's election, saying, hey, Mayor Daley, would wink and a nod to the gangsters. It was all corruption and money. That's what it's all about, and that's what it's all about now.
So I think what maybe needs to happen is, so Elon, do you know what Starlink is?
No.
Elon Musk. It's one of his companies where they've put something. I don't know how many. I think it's like 400 or 500 satellites around the
Oh
Earth
yeah,
in a
it's
ring,
coming.
and
Yeah.
it's satellite internet, so you can be in the middle of the ocean and get perfect internet connection. Maybe what he needs to do is provide that at a super low rate, and then say that you're not allowed to use Facebook or Instagram on it. Maybe bring it back to them. Here's internet for everyone at a great rate,
Yeah.
super fast, never drops, so you can get it everywhere in the world. It's just you're not allowed to surf Facebook or YouTube on it.
Well, I
Like,
mean, it's his company. He could do
you want
whatever he
you
wants to,
wanna
right?
fight fire with fire,
Yeah.
but maybe that's what needs to happen, and then we'll see how shitty that is, because then we're all gonna start to go, "Are we really just about to go down this, like, Cold War standoff of censorship, or should we just end censorship?" Maybe the only way to make everyone realize how bad it is to have it happen against big tech and have it happen against the left, and then maybe that's what's needed for everyone to, it's like, when you get when you get a taste of your own medicine and you go, "Oh,
Exactly. Exactly.
I should stop picking on my little brother. He just punched me in the face. That hurt."
Yeah. Exactly. Right. And that's what needs to happen. But I don't know. And you're right, though. I don't know to what extent. Up to the extent of almost having a civil war or a nuclear
Does it
war.
just go
It's like
forever?
no.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
It's I think we're coming to a very odd place, and by the way, don't let me keep you. Let me know how long you can talk
No.
for.
No. No. I mean,
Okay, okay, okay.
what
It's
we're good.
3:07.
We're good.
Okay. Yeah, we're coming to a very weird place in human history, because no one's ever had this power over this many people's day-to-day lives with communication. But we're also coming to a point where with robotics, which, I mean, Boston Dynamics, owned by Google, we're getting to a place where all of a sudden you maybe don't need soldiers if you could have a robot that doesn't question orders, a robot that doesn't have morals. Now, all of a sudden, are we going to see these tech giants start to have their own paramilitaries of robots that don't need anyone's approval? Are they going to start forming their own little, like, warring states? I mean, I know that sounds batshit insane, but if you extrapolate from enough data, you can see where that's going. Maybe it's in a decade, but I
You're
don't know.
scaring me. You're scaring me.
It should.
On October 1st, 1998, Skynet became aware
But
and
seriously,
and eliminated humanity.
But that's one thing I've thought about is, like, right? So what happens if you can scan a Delta Force member's brain, learn all of their skills,
Oh
and
yeah,
then you take that brain and then you just
yeah,
copy it 10,000 times and you put it into 10,000 robots, and now you have 10,000 Delta Force members that take your orders and yours alone, and they don't have morals, they don't think what about the Constitution, they just do what you tell them to.
right, right. Well,
Mhm.
luckily we're not there yet. So I think, but no, you raise a good point though. I didn't know Google owned Boston
Yeah.
Dynamics.
Yeah, but that's the dangerous thing, is that's coming. So you're gonna have these force amplifications, because, up until now, it's like, yeah, they can do this, they can do that, but I mean, when shit hits the fan, what happens? The National Guard goes onto the street, everyone go home, and it's like the government comes in with the heavy hand. Like, we saw it this
Right.
past year, we saw it after January 6th, we saw it in 1992 in LA. What happens when all of a sudden these big tech companies can push back? They say, "We're
Yeah.
not going home. Here's
Yeah.
our army of bulletproof soldiers that run on solar power."
Yeah.
Then what?
Yeah.
It's
Skynet.
it is. It's Skynet, and then you have to wonder, well, I bet the government has that too, but now are we just getting into this weird thing? Is the country gonna be divided into these weird regions where it's like the Silicon Valley area of the United States, and they have all their own robots and shit, and their robots will probably have blue hair or whatever, and you're not allowed to misgender them. And then are you gonna have, like, the flyover states in the middle? Are you going to have just a bunch of guys with guns out there defending their own? I mean, what's going on? It's like we're going to a very odd place
No,
very
we are.
quickly.
We are. And not only is it odd, it's also dangerous. I don't know whether you heard
Terrifying.
this morning, I heard something on TV that uh, there, I'm worried, and a lot of other people should be worried that Biden is trying to change the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms,
Jesus Christ.
And the article I saw this morning is that there are several cities, counties, and states across the nation that are setting up gun-free zones or gun-friendly zones. Kind of like areas where sanctuary cities against immigration, illegal immigrants. Well, these cities are saying, hey, we're setting gun-free zones here where the government doesn't have any authority to take your weapons. It's like what? It's like, hey, if the government chooses not to enforce federal immigration law, then they can choose not to enforce, whatever law they pass on guns. And it's like, okay, I mean, we're starting to become like fiefdoms, like different little kingdoms around the country, and just it goes into what you just said. Different. We're becoming different tribes. You know, it's like the Oklahoma City tribe, and the Utah tribe, and you know the Alabama tribe. God help you there.
Yeah, it seems like that's where it's going, right? Where it's just like we just decide we don't have laws here. But I mean, how far does that go? Why can't I just say, okay, this is my city and we don't recognize like open container laws. We can drink and we can, hey, you know what? We don't enforce rape laws. So if you come here,
Well,
good luck.
exactly, exactly.
Where does
I
this
mean, I
go?
think I think all laws need to be enforced evenly, even-handed
Yeah,
across the board. You just can't pick and choose, because if you start picking and choosing what laws you want to enforce, it's like holy shit.
it
I
goes
mean, we're in for a
downhill.
world of hurt.
And you have to wonder, why is this happening? And I think the most logical conclusion is that it's a foreign coup. It's a controlled demolition of America.
Right?
'Cause they can't take us
Exactly.
on with the military, so what are they gonna do? They're gonna pass legislation within the United States to make it crumble from within. So you're gonna
Yeah.
have weird things like conservatives can't talk, and we don't enforce this law here, and homeless people are allowed to shit on the streets here, and if you say anything, you're a bigot. And
Yeah.
open the borders, let everyone flood in, and it doesn't matter. Drain the treasury. It seems like it's a controlled demolition. I mean, what's the first thing Joe Biden did? A 100-day stand down of the U.S. military to go through the ranks for, quote, white supremacy. If that
Yeah.
doesn't sound like someone coming in and sweeping the ranks to find the loyalists to the previous administration,
Right.
where are we going? It's
Right. Yeah.
we're on a wild ride, and it seems like it's going straight down.
It's kind of like a dictatorship coming in and purging everybody who was loyal to the king. So
Mhm. I don't know where it's going. Where do you think it's gonna go?
you know what, Tom? I don't know. I'm optimistic, but I'm also pessimistic. I'm like 50-50. I mean, we can live through the next 4 years and come out the tunnel on the other side to a better administration, better days, or we could keep going down the way we are, and we could end up in a very dark place. I'm talking a very, very bad place. You know, but either way, I'm prepared.
Yeah, yeah, so am I. Either way, it's like, let's get it on.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
the one and we'll mind if we wrap this one up in a couple minutes?
Absolutely, absolutely.
One thing I always gives me comfort is I think no matter what, I'm gonna die one day, whether it's I'm 80 or whether it's I'm 30, so it doesn't really matter how bad it gets, 'cause eventually I gotta go anyway. So that's
Yeah,
like that's my peace.
we all got it coming. We all.
Yeah, it's coming to us all, whether
Yeah.
it's we keep it a good world and life goes on, whether it turns into some communist techno dictatorship. Either way, no one has to stay.
No, you
We
know
all
what though? It's not
we all
going to
gotta
turn
take it
into a
on.
communist techno dictatorship. It will never become that, because there'll be scorched earth here before that happens.
Yeah.
Okay, I can guarantee you that. But
Yeah.
you know what though? You raise an interesting point, which brings back a line from the movie Gladiator. When and Marcus Aurelius said, death smiles at us all. Death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back.
That's
you know,
beautiful.
it is great. So on that note, I
Let's
will depart, sir. I
let's wrap this up then. I'd never heard that before. That's a
Yeah,
beautiful
watch the
line.
movie,
I
or
yes,
look
I
it
need
up.
to, yeah. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Edmundo Morales. I will put your book in the description, sticking in the top comment. Thank you very much for coming on. As always, I enjoy our conversation.
It's my pleasure, Tom. Thanks for
Alright.
inviting me.
Alright, my
Okay,
man, of course.
take care. Bye bye.
You too.